Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, we're going to be looking at the immutable variants that have been released by Fedora. That includes Kinoite, Onyx, Silverblue, and Cervasi. And we'll talk about kind of the general features, and then maybe we'll delve into some of the specific things that each one of those brings to the table. However, before going into the video, I'd like to take a moment and thank my Patreon sponsors and also my YouTube members that have joined the channel to help support what you're seeing. I really appreciate what you folks do. All of them, however, are based on whatever spin that they originated from. For example, Kinoite, which is KDE based, comes from the Fedora KDE version. Onyx is Budgie, and it brings the Fedora Budgie baseline up. And then Cervasi is based on Sway, and so you have a window manager if you want to use that. And you have, of course, the original Silverblue, which is based on GNOME. That is based on the Fedora workstation. The difference between all of those, and the reason why we call it immutable, is because the root file system is read-only, and that's the big difference. So that means that also the subdirectories like USR, those are also read-only by default. Now, Etsy and var, those are still, they still have read access and read-write access as well. So those parts are not immutable because you still need to make configuration change. You need to write logs. You need to have a home directory located someplace. But yeah, so speaking of that, var is where all of the runtime state is stored for all of them. So your /home, /op, /srv directories, /mount, /temp, those are all now symlinked into var, and they have been for Silverblue for some time. But the new ones that are coming on, that's where you will find them. If you're not used to Budgie running in Onyx, then yeah, that's where you're going to find everything. I'm going to skip over this part about the dual booting. That is still in their notes, that they still don't recommend doing dual booting or manual partitioning. Now, we'll talk about manual partitioning. There is a limited set of manual partitioning that you can do. So how does this work? There's really three components. There's the RPM OS tree daemon, which is the service over which it manages the ability to lay down new images, to install packages, and to perform updates across the system. So you can kind of think of OS tree, that you can think of as kind of a deploy, compose, and update for the core technology of the system. OS tree operates like a version control system. So if you add a package or you update your system, it will create a new install point. And when you reboot, it's just like a snapshot where the changes that you made will be incorporated into the baseline, and then you'll be able to see all the new stuff that you installed. You cannot see anything new without a reboot. So if you install packages, you update packages, nothing new is going to take a hold in your system until you reboot and choose the latest version that's displayed in your grub menu. OS tree features, it's transaction oriented. That just means that if something happens along the way, the package doesn't successfully install, you don't have pieces of it still laying all over your file system. It automatically rolls back and does not create the new version going forward. So you have to have a full commit of that. If I'm going to do an update, it has to have a full commit all the way to the end successfully before it will create a new version. Same with installing packages. So you can roll back, you can OS roll back without impacting your user data. However, that you'll notice that there's only one from the command line, but there's more in the grub menu that it will track. I don't remember the exact number. It might be 8, might be 4. I just don't remember. Client-side package layering is basically what OSTree does. That is, I can keep installing packages separately, and it will layer them all together, so that when I reboot, I get a single cohesive version of my install. So, and that allows you can then build up your system and make your own derivatives out of it. OSTree is the underlying update mechanism of Fedora CoreOS, Kinolite, Silverblue, Onyx, and Cervece. You have Flatpaks, of course, that are available for your GUIs to get installed on these immutable systems, and that is enabled by default. So all you need to do is you can go to the App Store. It'll pick the Flatpak images and install them as you want. Toolbox is really meant for your CLI apps. So the RPM packaging layering is used for host updates. So generally speaking, this is not a rule. It is just a best practice. Install your services and things that are common to all users on your system at the RPM OSTree level. And for the individual applications and things that are needed for a user, put into Toolbox if they're a CLI, put into a Flatpak if they're a GUI. So there is still not a search command for our RPM OSTree, at least not one that I could find. So the only way you can actually find the name of a package is to have a toolbox set up with Fedora 39. Go in, do a DNF, you'll get and do a DNF search, and then you'll get the package name that you can then pass on the RPM OSTree command to install it. They're the same. Package layering works by it modifies your immutable installation, and it extends the packages from which your immutable distro is composed. So it allows you to build up, and that's what you should think of this as. Is it's not a traditional package install. You're actually expanding what's in the image for that, and that's the reason for doing these other things. Is that way you're only expanding the image for those things that are global, right? Not common to an individual user. Most but not all the RPM packages supplied by Fedora can be installed in these environments: Silverblue, Onyx, Kinolite, and Cervece. So if you're bringing packages in from the outside, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. So package layering also creates a new bootable file, a new system root. So that way it doesn't occur, you have a fallback. It doesn't affect your current root. So PL preserves rollback in the transactional model. PL means that you need to reboot when updating or installing new packages. I don't know this, I still have this in my slides, whether or not they'll actually ever implement the live update feature of RPM OSTree. I know that that's been an experimental feature for some time. I don't know what state it's in. They don't say in the release notes. I would assume it's either they couldn't figure it out, or they're still working on it and it's just taken longer than they thought. But that is supposed to be able to switch deployments to a new root without having to reboot. So what do you need to run this? So you need, at minimum, a dual core 2 gigahertz or better CPU, 2 gig of memory, 15 gig of disk space, and a 1024 by 768 display. You're probably going to find that very limiting. You move to the second step, which is the recommended. They recommend a 2 gigahertz quad core CPU or better, 4 gig of memory. I would say if you're going to do anything useful, I have run into thrashing. All of these seem to thrash really easily. So 8 gig seems to relieve that, because that's the only thing you can do to counter thrashing, is to increase memory. 20 gig of disk space and 1024 by 768 screen resolution. What about graphics hardware? I've not covered this before. Most of the recommended settings are pretty ancient. So yeah, if you have a fairly, I still have an XX5 series card from NVIDIA. I don't know why I kept it. I think it's kind of a sentimental thing because it was the first one I ever bought. It's old. It's really old. Intel GMA 900 series or better. NV30 from NVIDIA or better. AMD Radeon R300, Radeon 9500 or better. And one thing I was going to say here is that I have seen notes from users that are upgrading from old releases to newer releases, and they have NVIDIA hardware installed with the NVIDIA driver, and they're having some issues with the upgrade. You can upgrade in place, but apparently if you have, I guess it doesn't quite work. I don't know if it works any better on 39, but I know that was definitely an issue on 38. As far as the 6.5 kernel, there's no changes over what Fedora 39 workstation has in it. So what's new in Silverblue? So some of these global changes, well, first of all, let's talk about the file system. So one of the changes with 39 is they have the ability to support systemd boot. So if you want to do that, there's instructions kinda in the release notes that show that basically tell you if you want to do this, treat it like, it's for developers and testers. This isn't really meant for full up production workloads. So be careful if you do enable it. But one of the caveats, if you do enable systemd boot, is your boot EFI partition will expand because all of the things that Grub stored in /boot are moved to the boot EFI partition. So, and that could be up to a gig. So you may need to, when you partition the hard drive, add additional space for your boot EFI partition so you don't run out of room when the system copies in the kernel and all the supporting stuff into boot EFI, because 600 megabytes may not be big enough to hold everything. All the same enhancements are in for the versions of your particular immutable variant, whether it be, so Kinoit's based on Fedora KDE 39, Onyx is based on Fedora Budgie 39, Fedora Silverblue is based on Fedora Workstation 39. I don't know if Cervasi actually comes up from Sway 39, probably does, but I don't know for a fact. I don't use window managers. I know a lot of you do, but I don't. So one of the other global changes is if you're a Pascal programmer, I can't imagine there'd be too many of those left, but there might be some that are still diehard around using Pascal. Lazarus repackages its IDE for deploying software onto Silverblue. There's also a SPDX migration that's underway. That's for RPM. That identifies the license as a standard for the packages that are in the repos. However, only about 50% of them have been migrated to SPDX. Wayland is default for GNOME, and however, there is a legacy X11 server that's still available on Silverblue. I don't know. I haven't checked the rest of them. I ran into my usual problem with Wayland, and that is trying to use it on a virtual machine. Going to 1920 by 1080, I get the black screen of death when rebooting, and but it's up and it's running, and I can get to it from SSH, so I can go in and fix this. But the fix is to change your default manager to X11 server. The live system provides keyboard configuration from the live environment, and it copies it over to Anaconda when it starts up. So, which means, of course, that obviously it's using geolocation to do that, which means your network is up. If you're on Wi-Fi won't be up, and so you'll have that. I don't know how they handle that. The Anaconda configuration file changes. They removed Kickstart modules. They removed the add-ons enabled They also added geolocation for language selection, probably for the primary language for the distribution as well. Kickstart options also control the DNS handling, and they have added a 5-second delay during boot for OEM driver devices. Some of those can take a while to initialize and get ready. EFI partition says should be at least 500 MB. I noticed the default is 600 MB. There's also, they have added respect for your disk labels that you provide if you're using the customized, using BiLevit, which allows you to set your disk labels according to the partition that you're working on. So it'll preserve those, and so when you boot, you'll actually see them. Stratus 3.5 has been updated, Stratus D to 359 and 353 for the client. I noticed that most of those have to do with bug fixes and Klebus updates, as well as crypto setup. So a lot of changes in that area have taken place there. So Vagrant 2.3 is the latest version of the utilities. There's a number of enhancements for that. PAM console module is removed because there's a lot of security problems that haven't been fixed. Aspell is a spell checker. We talked about that the last time on Fedora Workstation. That's been deprecated and removed. There's a problem that if you have TZ data installed, the TZ data package installed in a container, that if there's sometimes the packages can get confused, and so some people just prefer to remove TZ data. And if you do that on the old one, it wouldn't let you because it would say, no, there's dependencies that exist. They've relaxed those dependencies, and so you can remove TZ data now. And what will happen is your system will roll to default to UTC time. That also will return that space out of the container. So there's a new system admin guide for 39 has been released. So you may be wondering what's going on here, why I'm only testing these 4 different variations and not testing Ubuntu and Debian and all those others. I am doing a hardware test. This is a full up, and I have not done those others on the Lenovo machine. So those I just don't have done, and I just don't have them in a place where I can do them. Okay, so let's look at the benchmarks for, this is all hardware. All of the Fedora are running on all of the immutable ones, Keynote, Onyx, Silverblue. Those are all running on a laptop. The Lenovo, it's a X1 Extreme. I think it's a number 2 version of it or something. But then I also included the Mac Mini just to see how it stacks up against a Core i9. Well, it's a Core i7 9th gen is what it is. It has a NVIDIA graphics card. I think it's a 16.6 something. It's pretty crappy. So yeah, it's not one of the best ones. It's not meant for gaming, that's for sure. I don't know what it really is intended for, but it works okay for desktop environments. But beyond that, you're really asking for it to do an awful lot of work. Keynote comes out on top by a little bit. I don't know why Silverblue didn't pick this up right. These all recognize the drive as NVMe, all 4 of them. So they're all none on the test for the I/O scheduler, which is the default with when you install this. These are all using ButterFS. As far as we can go check that. They're up in the top part of the benchmark. But I did not do anything other than the standard installs. IOPS test, the Mac Mini is doing the best of them by far, and then Silverblue is followed by Onyx and Keynote. Usually, I mean, this is kind of typical. It's kind of one of those rule of thumbs. Whoever does better in the MB or megabytes per second test usually does better, usually does worse than the IOPS test because IOPS is a function of small block And so, yeah, these are usually tuned for real large blocks, and this is tuned for small block read and writes. So, in case you ever want to know that, they're generally inverse in proportion. At least that's been my experience over my years of looking at IOPS. IOPS to me is just marketing. It's just a marketing ploy. Oh, well, we couldn't really copy data fast enough in large blocks, so we make up a test that just tests the small blocks. Megabytes per second. This is where I think the Mac Mini is cheating. It's actually, I know the drive is fast, but it's not that fast. It's not 3 times faster than the others. It is fast, definitely, but I'm having a hard time buying that. So the geometric testable means I do buy this one, though, because the overall speed of the Mac Mini was way faster. This machine, I'm trying to remember, I think was around $1,000. This one was around 1,600 or so. So, yeah, and I guess you could say, well, you're buying the monitor with the laptop. Yeah, that's true. You are. So, yep. And the keyboard and the trackpad. So, all those are there. So, yeah, but that is still a better deal. And yeah, in my mind. And that's why I use that one every day. The geometric, and why didn't I test these? There's no ARM version that I could find. So I would, if I had an ARM version, I would test it. Geometric mean of the CPU, although, you know what? I'd have to rip it apart to get it to fit on a SI. And that, yeah, they may have issues with that. They being Fedora might have issues with that. So geometric mean of CPU massive tests, the Mac does better. I don't know if that's, their processor is 2.4 gigahertz. The processor on the Lenovo is pretty close. I think it's a 2.6 with a speed bump up to like 3 point something. But I think the way the Mac is built on Linux, the way that this whole thing is constructed, it's really optimized to run well on Linux. Can't say the same for Apple's OS, but the ASA runs really well. I can tell you that. Geometric mean of the disk test. Now, this is going to include other tests besides FIO. There's dbench, and then there's a couple of caching tests that are tested as well that do hit the file system. Also, the geometric mean of the common kernel benchmarks, the Mac Mini does better. The mean memory test suite, yep, does better up there as well. I think what we're going to find is, we can just kind of scroll through this and get down to on the overall, were they out of order? Or did they? Yeah, they were. They were out of order. So you get down here to the first place finishes. Mac Mini's going to be first. Yep, by long shot. Onyx is next. Now this is just the number of first place finishes. So that's how this gets put into this graph. If it finishes first in a benchmark, it gets counted. If it doesn't get counted. Same thing here. If it's last in last place of all those, it gets counted. If it's second or third, doesn't get counted. So just so you understand that. I don't know if I've ever explained that before, but that's how this works. So that's all I can test right now, because that's all I have done on this version of. When you're looking at the detail for this, you're going to see Onyx had some other drive tests that the others didn't have. While I was running this test, apparently Phoronix was modifying the file benchmark. They're adding more workloads, like you can simulate a single workload going on. You can put 2 simultaneous workloads on, and 4 and 8 and 12. And they've been adding, it looks like they're piecemealing it. They're going, so the first time I ran it, they had 4. Then the second time I ran it, they had 8. And the third, and this was all during the same weekend. the same week, which was this week, and running these, and they just kept adding on more and more drive tests. So pay attention to job count 1. That's the one we want to look at for now. As far as the others, those would be incomplete because Silverblue doesn't have the new tests yet in my benchmark, and because those had been run while Phoronix was still messing around with this. So, yeah, bad timing on my part, I guess. But so overall, that's the way things shake out. So I'm going to use Kinoite, which is KDE, and look, I think they got this right. Let's see. Yeah, they got the quarter panels to work. So interesting that they got it to work and nobody else did. No, I mean, I didn't try Sway. I'm sure they did as well. So let's take a look at some things that we usually look at here. So I do have quite a few packages installed on this. This is taking up 12 gig. I have installed things like Office, I think. Let me check. Yes, I installed LibreOffice, which is not installed by default. And I also installed, let's take a look at Toolbox, and we'll do a list. I also installed 3 different toolboxes, one for development, and these are half a gig each. So you got development, Fedora, and then stuff. This is actually Red Hat, as you can see. That's Red Hat 9.3 to be exact. So yeah, I've got a little bit heavier environment than most. So let's look at how these are organized first. So this is my root. You'll notice that bin's usually pointed over to user bin, so that's not unusual. But our home directory's been also relinked to var home. Lib is pointed to user. Lib64 is pointed to user. Mount's going over to var. Opt is going over to var. And service is over to var. So yeah, these immutable ones are trying to get everything that is running that is changeable into just as few directories as possible. Etsy, of course, is open and you can read and write files in there. Although I suspect someday they probably will move that, although there's probably so many of the boot processes that are hard-coded to look for Etsy and /Etsy, so they probably can't get away with that. The other thing that we might want to look at here is, let's see, LS block. So this is what we were talking about. If you change, see this is set to a gig right here. So this is grub. I don't have systemd boot, but if you decide to go that way, you'll need to take this and add it on to the space that's in this partition. So just be aware of that because they don't use this for systemd boot. At least not on the immutable ones anyway. So yeah. All right. So what else do we need to look at? Let's see. Let's run Linus. I think I have Linus here. All right. So we'll let that run, and then we'll come over here and we'll do HTOP, which is going to fail because those I installed under Toolbox. You can see it stopping and stuttering. So we got 67. That's exactly the same thing that Fedora Workstation got. The only thing that this adds is this group check. This is a false positive, and what it's complaining about here is there are groups that it's looking for, like Ben and Damon and some of those that are missing because they're not part of the system, and we can check that. Yeah, there's just root wheel and me, and so that's a false positive. Just ignore that. That's garbage. You can actually whitelist this if you want. Take it off the check. And IP tables is a common one because there's no rules that's in it, and we can certainly check that. And sure enough, no rules. So let's go into Toolbox and get my little purple dot. Now I want to try something real quick. Let's do a new window. Let's see if it inherits. No, good. It's not inheriting. On one of the ones, I think it was in the beta, it was actually say, oh, okay, you want me to create another Toolbox window, and that's what it did. So, yeah. And then when you logged out of that Toolbox, it closed your window, of course. So it looks like they got that fixed. Let's look at HTOP first. So yeah, HTOP is definitely looking at the local container environment, because I tell you what, there's a lot more stuff running on this system than that. But they do seem to be seeing something in threads. Yeah, this looks a little slanted. Memory looks right. Yeah, memory looks right, but this doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't look right. So let's see what Glances does. I don't really like HTOP all that much. It's got a lot of errors in it. So task 222, that looks like a system task level, and we can certainly test that. We'll just do a word count and see what we get. Yep, 226. That's pretty close. And then we have threads at 521. So yeah, it's looking like a system view to me. It's taken about, with the app caches, about 1.23 gig, that's a little high for KDE. It's normally, but you remember, I am running under Toolbox, so I've got some overhead on the system running. Plus, I've installed some packages that have services in them, like SSHD, for example, is running on this and allows me to be able to get access to the virtual machine without having to go through the console. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let me pop this out. Let's do a little bit longer view. Nice. So that's working. Yeah, we can do a NeoFetch just for that. Oh, no, we can't, because it's not there. It's over here. All right. One thing I do want to do, OS tree search. We're going to look for fast fetch. Let's see how long this takes. Not too bad. That's not bad. Not bad at all. The first time I ran this during the beta, it was pretty slow, but it looks like they have fixed that, and it's running much better. So the other thing I want to test is, according to the Apply Live, it says that if I do a package install, let me exit out of this. Let's just see what we got here before I actually do this. So this is from 11/18, which is today. Nope, yesterday. So let's see what happens now. I don't know if I've updated this recently, so probably ought to check that too. Those are the 8 packages that it normally does for fast fetch. So let's just see what we get here. Yeah, it's just fast fetch. Okay, so we should be able to do this. We should be able. So RPM, OS tree, Apply Live. I don't think there's anything I have to do. We'll do a help. Only if I want to give it a different target. Okay. Or allow replacement. All right, hit it. Let's see what happens. Successfully running. So now what does it show me? Well, I guess we'll just do this one. It says, okay, so this is transient, meaning that it's still gonna flip to this one once I reboot, if I choose, that build. But okay, let's see what happens if I try to run the command. Will it blow up? No, it runs. Wow, that is a lot faster than NeoFetch is, isn't it? That's what they said. They said it would be faster. So we have search now in RPM OS tree. That's great. So, all right. So this little message right here, it says to ensure safety. Now, they may not ever change this. This may be just the way it's going to work unless somebody comes up with the problem that they have is that, remember we were talking about the updates create a new image, and so do new packages. So apparently it's easier to deal with individual packages than it is, which would make sense, than to deal with a full-scale system update that could include a kernel. So, and also updates to Grub and all the things that are out in the, all the file systems for booted and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's what they're saying. So this might be the only way this is ever going to work, but that's all right. I don't want to fall. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all I get is 4 back. Now, there's a way that you can get to the older ones. They don't roll off. But this should be the one that includes fast fetch. So now fast fetch should be on top, should be active, is what I'm saying once I boot into the. Not to just check the status. Fast fetch active. It's got the white dot. That indicates which one is the current one. So yeah, it's rolled the transient up. So that's just temporary. I guess that allows you to test stuff out before, so you don't have to reboot. Or you can schedule your reboot. So what are some of my overall impressions? It works. It does its job. I like some of the new features. The things that I was hoping for was we would finally have a search, and we've got that in RPM. And that's great. That's absolutely great. So I don't have to keep going into Toolbox and run DNF to get the search done. The second thing I like is that at least, the apply live is fine. So if you, in other words, if you have a system update, you have to reboot. So that's the only thing you can do. If you're installing a package, now it didn't say about multiple packages, and I haven't tried that. Maybe I'll play with that and I'll let you know when I find out. But doing a single package install, it seems to work fine. It creates a transient environment, and then when we have time, you can reboot, and then that's really nice. Like that too. Fedora, would you please give us the ability to build a standard-based partition using all 3 of those? So if I want to put this on XFS, or if I want to put this on ext4, I can do that. That's you can leave your Btrfs for those people that are absolutely wanting to do it. But as you will see from the benchmarks, and as you did see from the benchmarks, the file system has the greatest impact on unless you're changing out a USB stick, but the file system absolutely will have an impact on the overall performance of your system. It is not just about what files it's reading. File system changes at the system level, at the sysroot level, are going to cascade into everything that runs. And so poor choices there make for poor performance of the overall system. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you all again soon. Bye for now.